Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriel Martel. I'm the Young Friends General Meeting Coordinator. And today we're having our second episode of this show that I've decided to call The Friend Connection. I welcome any feedback about that. And today I have my colleague Susanna, and she's going to be facilitating a chat with friends from around the world about climate change and sustainability. So go ahead, it's all yours.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this chat. It's great to be here with you all. I guess I was just interested to have a really informal discussion with you all about the impacts of climate change on your lives, daily lives, and your hopes and your fears and your frustrations around the issues of sustainability, resilience, and climate change. So I've come up with questions that we can work through and just discuss as a group and contribute to, but it really doesn't have to be hugely formal. So do chip in as and when you want to.
Should they introduce themselves as well?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe to start with, we could all just go around and introduce ourselves and say a little bit about us. I can start, I guess. So as Gabriel said, my name is Susanna, and I work for an organisation called FWCC, which is the Friends World Committee for Consultation, which I think probably most of you know about, which is really the world body of Friends. And I'm working on a sustainability project over the next 2 years to really strengthen our environmental commitment and try and amplify the Quaker voice on sustainability, and to encourage yearly meetings specifically to move forward from the Pisac Sustainability Minute of 2016 and take 2 concrete actions on sustainability involving young friends in key roles. So that is kind of my broad work remit. And I've been doing this role since September, so it's still quite new. And really speaking with friends around the world is very exciting and really helpful for my work. So it's great to see you all.
Okay, so I'm Gabriel. As I said before, I organize events and support the young friend community in the UK. So I do loads of things. And what about you, Cornelius? What do you do?
I work in an office.
Just a quick introduction.
I work in an office. FWCC is an organization, but the section of Africa. And my role is I play the supportive role to the young Quakers in Africa, and then also to do communication for the Office of Africa section.
Okay, that's good. What about you, Ludwig?
Hi, my name is Ludwig. I'm with the Boho Worship Group, a group of 3 isolated friends with direct membership with FWCC. We don't have a monthly meeting or a yearly meeting or anything like that. We direct through FWCC, and I work with the nonviolent conflict transformation group called the Alternatives to Violence Project. We do the program in the Philippines. We're trying to get it all over Southeast Asia, and I also work with a committee on AVP International, and for work, I am a digital media consultant. Basically, that's it.
Quite a lot.
And Maria, I don't know if you're going to be able to speak. She's still figuring out. She's still figuring out, my friend. She's Young Friends General Meeting International Secretary. So she liaises with people, Quakers from around the world, especially Europe. And she lives in Spain, in Galicia, and there are no Quaker meetings there. So she's trying to connect with you all and create a sort of a community around her. And 2 or 3 times a year she comes to the UK. So you're all welcome to message her, and she's working on the possibility of an exchange program between Africa and the UK at the moment. So I guess with that, we can start with the questions if you want.
Yeah, I guess just one more bit of housekeeping. I just thought if once we're not speaking, it probably makes sense if we try and mute our microphones just so we don't interrupt each other too much, if we can. I think we can do it here.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll try and remember to do the same. So the first question I thought of to discuss is really just to find out a bit more about what climate change means to each of us, and specifically, how does climate change and environmental concerns affect your life and your community where you live? And I guess from my perspective, here in the UK, we're very lucky that we haven't really felt some of the worst effects of climate change yet, but we're certainly aware that there are parts of the world which are living with the daily realities of climate change. And we're even seeing increased incidences of flooding here in the UK, which is having a big impact on our communities. But really, I'm interested to hear from all of you more about this. So, Cornelius, do you mind going first?
Can you unmute yourself, Cornelius? We can't hear you.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry. Just about that. So let me try to be the first one. Climate change, I would say, is the change in climate. Because there's a certain way we expect things to happen in terms of patterns and everything, rainfalls and what have you. So when there's a change in terms of how normally those things happen, then it becomes an issue to all of us. And so that's why I would actually say that climate change is just abnormality from the normalcy that most of us would actually expect. And then how does it affect my life? And personally, just trying to reflect on some of the things that have been happening in Nairobi of late. It's been extremely hot, some of us, and that is a result of climate change. And then of late, we've also experienced low levels of waters in water reservoirs. And so it has actually led to some water rationing in the city, because I'm actually based in Nairobi, water rationing. And so when we have water rationing, then that means also things like electricity, there must be rationing. So when we have rationing of waters and electricity, then that means that there's low productivity, because some of the big companies that actually rely on electricity supplies for them to actually do their production, nothing is happening. And then when there's no electricity, it's like you online, it becomes a problem, because the electricity is being rationed. So sometimes it becomes a challenge on how people can actually connect, so that we can actually renew our deeper connections as friends. So basically, that's how actually we want to look at it, me as a person, and also affects my community.
Specific issues like lower food production and more hunger due to climate change. Has it been that specific, the changes you were experiencing?
Yes, because we've actually had a lot of campaigns in Kenya, like something called Kenyans for Kenya. And Kenyans for Kenya was an initiative that was actually started by people in the media and some corporate institutions. It was actually meant to help those people who live in places that were actually affected by the droughts, because rainfall patterns are not reliable. Sometimes farmers do not know when is the right person to do the planting. And so sometimes the challenge in terms of climate, and then sometimes also we need to modify or improve on some of the seedlings or seeds that farmers can normally use, so that we can actually realize that food security. And so drought means there's not enough food. And so when we have less food, that means that there's hunger. And so we do not actually live to the expectation of one of the SDGs that we have to improve on food production, so that we have that food security for our people. So it's still also part of the challenges of some of the effects of climate change, I would say.
Do you want to ask anything else? Or should we move to Ludwig?
Happy to move on. Ludwig, do you want to share anything?
Sorry, are we going through the questions individually or?
Yeah,
welcome it. Yeah, welcome it.
That's what we did last time. We kind of each took a turn contributing. If that works.
Yeah, but like one question at a time. That's right.
Yeah, I think that's how we'll try it to start with at least.
Okay, so well, where do I even begin? I was supposed to be doing like a survey for work that I'm doing with Quakers in Australia to provide sustainable clean water access to rural communities and impoverished communities on my island, which is in the central Philippines. And I haven't been able to do that because the clay supply is a mess because of all this rain that we're experiencing. It's quite unusual to be having this much in January. It's not meant to be the monsoon seasons, but all that has changed. We don't know what to expect, and we don't know when to expect the rains anymore. That has largely affected the farmers as well and food production because the patterns in planting that they used to rely on, it was supposed to be planting in August or something like that. They can't rely on that anymore because it doesn't work the same way it used to. Fishermen are also having an immense difficulty because of problems like intense heat when it's not supposed to be that intense. So coral bleaching is a massive problem and depleted fish populations. So yeah, that has to do with food sustainability and being in a tropical country, we're suffering more and more tropical cyclones more frequently. In January alone, we've had 3 already. And these things result to things like flooding and landslides and more storm surges. So feeling the brunt of it in the Philippines, I must say.
Is clean water a problem? Like, do you need some help cleaning water? Or
in the rural communities, usually the ones in the mountains that don't have access to it. I'm working with a group called Abundant Water. They do work in other places in Southeast Asia, especially Laos. So we're connecting with them and seeing. I'm about to do a survey for communities on the needs that they have. So yeah.
Are you aware of the Lifesaver bottle? Or Lifesaver bottle? Have you heard of this?
The what?
It's called Lifesaver bottle. It's a bottle about this big, and you can put completely dirty, diseased water through it, and clean, safe water comes out the other end. One bottle that costs. Have you heard about this thing?
Yeah. I didn't know what it was nominally, but now that you described it, yes. What we're working with though is we're working on allowing people to create a water filtration system based on indigenous materials. So, yeah, for sustainability in the long term. Yeah. Well, thank you though for that.
No, that's fine.
I have one question, Ludwig. You mentioned these patterns you used to be able to predict the seasons and the weather by being disrupted. How is that a recent thing that you've noticed these disruptions? No,
it's been going on for a relatively long time. But when I was born, and I think I lived about half of my life hearing about people still being able to rely on those patterns. And then when I entered university, it started getting really bad.
Yeah.
And that was about 10 years ago. Yeah.
Gosh, yeah. Well,
Maria has replied as well.
Oh,
so I can read her answer.
Yeah, great.
So in Spain, which you would think Europe has been spared, but we haven't been spared in Europe as well. So she lives in a part of Spain, in northwest of Spain, which is really green, and there's a lot of rain. There are lots of jokes about it in Spain. But this year we've had loads of fires in Galicia, droughts, which is something that's really unheard of over there.
Yeah.
Lots of really violent storms, harvest being ruined, and something that has damaged Spain in the economy, because we depend a lot on exporting food because of our climate. And then there was a really weird snowstorm. I don't know if you saw that. The whole country was paralyzed.
Yeah, I think
so you get both extremes. People die in Seville every year because of the heat. So where I'm from in Gran Canaria, the dams are pretty much empty. Food production has gone down, and the price of food has gone up considerably the last few years.
It's a hard question to answer, but how much do you think people associate these things that we're discussing with climate change?
I think not at all.
Not at all.
Because in mainstream media, in Spain at least, the connection is not being made. So I think out of interest, like people don't make the connection between getting your power from a power plant and producing lots of CO2, and that's going to increase the temperature of your country and ruin the weather. So, for example, solar energy is going up in Spain, and we have quite a lot of renewable energies, but the government not long ago put a huge tax on solar power energy, so they're actually squashing our efforts to go green. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work to be done.
That's certainly something we encounter here in the UK as well, with really needing more leadership from government and more initiatives that people can get involved with, which sadly just aren't happening at the moment. Okay, so we can move on to the second question.
Yeah.
I might skip that one actually and move on to. I've actually added another question since the email, so apologies. But I wanted to know what, if anything, frustrates you about climate change and discussions about the environment and sustainability, and what can we do about it? And I can give an example of what I mean here. So something that frustrates me here in Britain, and it happens to other friends as well, not just generally, is this idea. We talk often about this future problem and the fact that climate change is something for the future generations, and we talk about what world are we leaving for our grandchildren to grow up in, and actually not realizing that this is happening now and around the world. People are already living with this, and this isn't a future far off problem. And in terms of what we can do about it, I guess more conversations like this, more conversations where we can share experiences of people and help bring it home to people that this is actually happening now. And we also need to start thinking about resilience more, and what we can do to deal with the impacts which are becoming more and more inevitable and more extreme and difficult. So yeah, I think that's something that I often come up against in conversations, where people don't associate this as something sort of here and now that's already happening. So Cornelius, do you have anything to share on that in terms of things that frustrate you?
I don't know where we are. Is that the changes?
But what frustrates
Come again?
What frustrates you about the narrative that's currently going on about climate change in your country, in the world? Do you think we are awake? Do you think we realize what's going on? That's kind of the question.
All right. Well, it's a technical question, but I'll try to respond to it by saying that I think, well, you're not actually realizing the objective. That's what I can say so far, because we've had a lot of policies formulated, and I think the implementation bit is where we have a challenge, because people are not so serious about some of these things. And because people have done a lot of invitations, called upon people, practitioners, professionals to explore ideas and practices. They formed committees, and like in Kenya, we have National Environment NEMA. But sometimes, we come up with policies that are not well implemented. And but I think for me, I would say that the best would be personal responsibility, and the people themselves to do what we call self-commitment towards environment, and things like trash, water bottles, those street wrappers, and so that we're not actually littering all over, but trying to make sure that we are living responsibly, and trying to make sure that those small things that we throw around, littering in the streets, maybe like in Nairobi sometimes you see someone is driving, but still, they're actually throwing things through their car windows. And so when people are responsible, to themselves and to the environment, then that is something that maybe, would actually help us try and start moving towards the right direction. And then something else that I can say, there are certain things you actually want to look at them and analyze, like, every year, most of all of us, we have what we call birthdays. And it's something that we hardly forget. But, when you try to talk about things like maybe tree planting, how many of us would say that we always remember that, it's actually my responsibility to make sure that I'm planting something like a tree, maybe once in a year or twice in a year. We always remember things that actually, what you want to remember, like holidays, you have to plan for it. But things that matters environment, it's like, hey, it's none of my business. But I think, it's high time that most of us will say, I need to commit myself. I need to do something about climate. I need to plant, if it's planting trees, if it's, just being responsible as a person and not being forced or coerced, not waiting for laws and policies to be formulated so that you can say, wait, I need to be responsible. But just out of, it has to come out of me from within that I need to be responsible, so that out of my responsibility, someone else, can actually have that beautiful environment. I cannot be doing it for myself, but for someone else.
Thank you, Cornelius. Ludwig, do you have anything to share on this? You don't have to. It's just if you have things you want to contribute, please do.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. About Cornelius, friend speaks my mind. And also, implementation is a big thing, and sometimes it's also because people become apathetic, or they are left apathetic, and there's a general lack of effort that will allow an impact in the collective consciousness of the people that we're having conversations with. Primarily in the Philippines, caused by terms being too technical. I mean, like this whole climate change fiasco, it's not explained in ways that allow people who have considerably lesser education levels than those talking to be able to understand what they're really saying. So that's my frustration, and it leads to people not caring because, hey, what are you talking about? I don't get that. So yeah,
I can say that it's kind of frustrating because it sort of feels like it's our fault. It's people who live in the richest countries is the ones that are ruining the world. And we were having a brief conversation earlier of how the average UK adult will consume 600 times more dirty energy than someone from Bangladesh, for example. So I feel like it's so much work to do here. It's so frustrating. People are so unaware that we need a lot of help to tell this story to people. We feel really alone in that sense.
There was some really interesting research done.
Sorry, do you want to say something?
Yeah, another thing is an effect of this kind of like general apathy that people have, or refusal to understand, I don't know, is the fact that they still have these considerations for things like coal. And then Recently, we've been my island has been trying to gain self-sufficiency in energy production, and the solar idea is generally considered like it's in the bottom of the list of considerations because of financial implications, and not really thinking about the greater costs to the environment, the greater costs to things like food security and the cleanliness of the earth, and will you still be able to plant in that? But why are we still having these conversations, really? I mean, doesn't it make sense because there's no infrastructure for coal to begin with? Doesn't it just make sense to pick the cleaner alternative? But alas, in a country where people live hand to mouth, sometimes you can't blame them for wanting the cheaper alternative. Why is it so cheap too? Even yeah. Sorry for the rant.
You want to say something?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to hear, and it's very difficult. And when I have similar conversations with people when I'm saying, well, why do you fly up to Scotland, for example, when you can get the train? Well, when the train costs 3 times more than the flight, why would you? And it's really difficult whilst the cost isn't supporting the transition to a clean economy, then it's very difficult to make that a case for a lot of people. I just wanted to add to something Gabriel was saying about the fact that we sometimes call it the climate silence here, where people don't talk about it and it's not acknowledged. And there was some recent research by Climate Outreach which suggests that 2/3 of people surveyed here in the UK can't remember ever having a conversation about climate change. So this is something that we have endless resources, there's a lot of stuff in the media. There are ways that we could engage with this, but 2/3 of people still aren't even engaging at all.
And I would like to add something that I had in a documentary. It's like it is not for lack of solutions.
Yeah.
Like the solution to climate change are already here. Mm-hmm. We've already sorted how to get clean water from anywhere, how to collect rainwater, how to produce enough food for the world. This is a fact. We can produce enough food for everyone. Mm-hmm. We can produce clean energy. So we are really coming up against a mindset and an ideology issue. This is the only thing that's left to do, is how can we convince people over here? That's the only thing that's left to do, really. Yeah. Maria said something as well.
Yes, go ahead. This is Maria's contribution, and then in a second we'll say hi to Taz.
Yeah. So Maria said that the thing that she finds frustrating is the fact that the older generation does not want to change their ways, does not want to invest in clean energy, even though they might have 30, 40 years left of dirty living. And then everyone in Spain seems to believe this is something for the next generation to do, from the young people, which at the moment in Spain we are really disempowered. Mm-hmm. This is partly why I'm here in the UK. Mm-hmm. A lot of I haven't got a degree, but a lot of our best people with masters and PhD have gone to Germany and the UK. So we've lost our intelligentsia in Spain. Mm-hmm. And often we young people don't know where to start. We feel very lost, and it seems such a huge issue that it seems impossible to do anything meaningful. And we don't do everything that we could do because of the lack of information about it or the lack of support of the media. She said there are many more things apart from recycling that we can do. And also things like, for example, I think there's been an argument about in the UK, the fact that everything is plastic wrapped. Yeah. That's another thing we come up against these obstacles every day. And she says there are many simple options that we could do to live a greener life. And we're basically asking people to change the entire way that they live, how they live their lives. So, but we should really start trying to do small things like having a compost bin at home, trying to recycle everything. we should mention the fact about the cost of meat consumption.
Yeah.
Like we should make clear that just one person eating meat every day spends loads of thousands of liters of water every year. So even just one person making a change in the way they live will have a huge impact overall. Yeah.
And in parts of the world where that is a very realistic choice to be able to make on a daily basis, we can choose anywhere we go. We can choose a plant-based diet very easily without really any inconvenience to us, and it would have a huge impact. And I think, Maria, what you're saying about what kind of where do you start is so big. It's a really terrifying thing to try and get your head around, but something I'm keen to try and work on, particularly among friends, is trying to create a bit more of a positive movement about climate change, where we look at what each of us can do, and so much of it is focused on what we can't do and what we shouldn't be doing. And actually, let's look at our lives and say, well, okay, this is one area where I can make this change. So whether that's starting to eat having one meat-free day a week and more plant-based diet, or changing your energy supply, or replacing some flights with train journeys. It doesn't mean that we have to do everything and we can't all, that's just not feasible for all of us, but I think a lot of people shut down and disengage from the whole discussion because they can't do them, and so then they feel kind of guilt and shame, and it becomes too much again. So I'm really interested in trying to just be a bit more positive and a bit more caring and supportive of each other. Yeah, and action oriented, and just say, well, look, what can you do? And let's take those things, because each small action builds up and does make a difference and will lead on to other small actions. And when you think about every person in the world making their small changes and their small contribution, suddenly we don't feel so tiny compared to the big companies and the big governments. So
Maria's going to have to go now, so we're going to say bye to Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us, Maria.
Thank you.
And we'll be in touch.
And we're going to say hi to Taz.
Hello, Taz.
Hello, sorry I'm so late.
Can you introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know you?
Oh yes. Hi, I'm Taz. I work in the FWCC World Office. I'm the database manager. So, hi, Susanna.
If you want.
That's about it.
Yeah. Do you want to answer the question? Do you want to answer the question we were exploring before?
Yeah. I haven't actually had a chance to look at them. Sorry.
That's okay. I can repeat it for you, Taz. I didn't actually send this one around anyway. So we're talking about the frustrations that we find either with the narrative and the discussions around climate change and environmentalism, or just with any aspect of it really. And I talked about being frustrated, for example, by thinking of this as a future problem rather than seeing it as something that's happening now.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing.
Is that, yeah. I think really the problem for me is I feel like whatever impact I do, it's never going to really have much of a global effect. Have lots of little drops to make up the ocean, as it were. But I feel like
we're having problems with your sound, Taz. Could you repeat what you said?
Really difficult to.
We were mentioning before that a person in the UK has the impact of 600 people in Bangladesh, for example.
Oh well then.
So yeah, it's a fact. So just you making even small changes in your life,
change,
or anyone that lives in the UK. There's so many things that I haven't done and I want to do. It will have a huge impact. Like you having one less burger a week is 8,000 liters a month of water. They're not going to go to waste.
Right.
And 8,000 liters for a village in Philippines, that's a lot of water. You can plant a lot of with 8,000 liters.
Wow.
So we're trying to empower each other in making those changes.
Yeah. Yeah, so sort of starting off on the negative.
That's what she was saying, right?
Yeah. Should we move on?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Gabriel, the next one. The other question that I had was, I guess it leads on directly from this question, but what changes would you like to see in this area, and sort of what would you like to see happen? So maybe if there was one thing that you think could be done differently and could really change either things sort of for you specifically in your country, in your community, or just more widely, what would they be?
Wow. I think I'd like to see. Wow. I mean, I think Quakers generally, in my experience, British Quakers tend to be pretty good environmentally. As for my general community, I don't know.
Don't feel pressure to.
We can go around and we can always come back if things occur to you. So
really having trouble, because I mean, in my local communities, things are actually pretty good. It's just me personally, but
That's good.
That's good.
I have seriously changed my diet.
How about Cornelius? We can.
Yeah, Cornelius.
Sorry, yeah, Cornelius.
We can come back. We can come back round.
Yeah, good.
What was the question again? Sorry.
It was sort of around what changes would you like to see, what do you think needs to happen. It could be something very specific, or it could just be a broader view about the climate change narrative. Maybe is there one thing that you would really like to see being done differently?
The community, for example.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the most interesting things that I would say is that if you visited a very remote village in, let's say, maybe Kenya, and ask people about climate change, don't be surprised, most of them do not have a clue what it means. So I think sometimes we talk so much about, climate change, and maybe we could be having just a few people who have an understanding of what it's all about. And so I think the first thing I would say, information sharing. So if Cornelius maybe can sit here and maybe have some kind of online meeting and has some kind of basic understanding of what climate change is, how about that person who lives in a very deep remote village? Change is. So information sharing and making sure that we have information, if it means translating all the literature to make sure that we have people having the information in the best language they can actually understand. I think that's something that would actually make sure that we are all in this, so that's not just for a few people. Maybe people have an understanding, or when we talk about climate change and policies, so people can travel. But each and every person, you need to have basic understanding of what climate change is, and they need to know what will be their role in terms of trying to make sure that we are doing something towards making sure that we are actually trying to realize some of these things, so that it's not just a story even now and then on TV or in the media, but it's something that we're actually doing to make sure that we achieve whatever that we want to achieve. So that would be one. Then I'll still go back to personal responsibility. I think I really want to see people, being responsible for wherever they are, wherever they're sitting, whatever they're doing, to make sure that at least they care for the climate and they care for the environment. Your surrounding, wherever you are, it must be neat, clean every now and then, and not just doing things for the sake of doing, because some kind of our attitude. Maybe we need to work or reformat our thinking in terms of our attitude, so that whatever we are doing, that environment, something that we actually value, at least. I think those are things that maybe we can share, and then I leave it to the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Cornelius. Thank you. I'm going to suggest that Ludwig, we ask you to share next, and then we will go to Myron, and you can introduce yourself, Myron, and then answer the question as well, but we'll just give you a minute. So if we go to Ludwig next.
Sorry, I just changed the orientation of my screen and I was having trouble finding where the unmute button was. What changes would I like to see in this area? Mostly in that people become aware of the things that they do on a daily basis, the things that they're so used to on a daily basis, just for a matter of convenience, that they don't really, they can do away with it. Things like using a plastic straw or a plastic bag. And yeah, I want there to be a greater level of awareness in societies as a whole, so that we can change these things slowly and people can come to realize that a plastic straw has a really big impact. It takes resources and resources to create, and then it's used for 5 minutes and gets chucked and ends up in the ocean for like freaking 600 years. So the fact that would they use that at home? No. So they can certainly be in a restaurant and not have it. So just small things like this that have a big impact, if it's practiced by people, like a larger group of people. So yeah, and people setting an example. Yeah, that's what I want to see.
There's definitely a theme emerging here, I think.
Yeah.
Move on to Myron.
Yeah, Myron. Hi, welcome. Hopefully your microphone is working. So I'll hand over to you so you can introduce yourself to everyone, just briefly. And I guess we've been going through a number of questions, but we've discussed how climate change affects each of us and our lives, our kind of frustrations with either the debate or the narrative around climate change. And now what we're discussing is what improvements or what changes we'd like to see. So if there was just kind of one thing, what that might be. So maybe if you wanted to introduce yourself and then focus on that last question about the changes that you'd like to see, that would be great.
Okay, so first, apologies for joining the call late, and it's just that I'm too busy with there's a section event in Bolivia, so there's a lot of things to do. And well, I'm Myron. I'm part of the Central Executive Committee from FWCC. I'm from Central Friend yearly meeting in Bolivia, an evangelical meeting. And what change I want to see? I think what I want to see is maybe give it, not seeing the climate change as just a superficial thing, like, okay, let's preserve the world or something, but rather a reason behind that is that everyone can see that this is not our creation. This is not a thing that we have invented, that the earth is not a human invention, but it's more than that. It's a God created one. So we have we have to take care of it, because it's not a thing that it was just there. It's a God-given one. So it's like when someone borrows you something or gives you something as a gift, and you don't just throw it away, or because it was being given with so much love. So it's
we're supposed to take care of it, not exploit it and destroy it. Yeah, it's our duty to take care of it, right?
Yeah, because it's not a thing that it was really it's not a thing that that we have created. So yeah, I think a more spiritual impact on that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Myron. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. We're kind of running up to an hour now, so we probably have time just to go around and do one more question, really, and then we can wrap up. But I thought we could try and end on a positive, uplifting note, and maybe each share stories or examples of, I guess, Quakers taking climate action, either within your own yearly meeting or your local meeting or anywhere else in the world that you've heard about, really. And it doesn't have to be a Quaker thing, but I guess that was the initial idea. And one of the really nice parts about my job is that I'm hearing stories from all around the world of very empowering and inspiring testimony from friends who are taking action on climate change. And it's a really good part of my day every time I hear one of these stories. So I thought we could all maybe just share something we've come across.
Can you tell one really quickly?
There's some really amazing work happening in Rwanda. So Rwandan Friends have a Forever Green Rwandan Friends initiative, and they are engaging with lots of government initiatives around sustainability, which is obviously a kind of helpful starting point. But the Quaker community are then taking these initiatives out into the rural communities and setting up kind of their own initiatives around building resilience, really, and increasing the sustainability. So there are actually some examples of some of these stories, these case studies, on the FWCC website now. If you go to fwcc.world/sustainability, and we're kind of collecting these stories and we're publishing them as we get more in. So I guess this is also a call. If anyone would like to share their story or would like to talk to me more about this, then I would love to be in touch about that, to produce something like this. And similarly, please do check out some of the other stories and share them, because this is how the conversation builds, and this is how the Quaker movement will get stronger and amplified if we share each other's stories.
I would like to share two things as the Quaker community, because it's also good to hear that it's not happening only in the Quaker world. I mentioned before the initiative started by this Senegal government, and they're setting up 14,000 eco-villages in Senegal with really bare bones materials, but they're making it work. And these villages are really producing enough energy and food to sustain themselves. And they have now become from really poor, deprived villages into really thriving communities wherever they've been set up. So, and then on another note, there's this organization that I work called Ubuntu, that's trying to set up sustainable villages all across the world, and they're having some really good successes in countries. And then we have someone called Aime that has just joined. Are you there, Aime?
Yeah, I'm Aime.
Hello, Aime. So
hello.
We're about to finish our talk, but there's one question that we would like you to answer if you can. First of all, could you just quickly tell us about yourself? Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, okay, I can.
You're just walking around the street.
Sorry, I was not aware of this call meeting. I was doing something else at my university.
No problem.
So my name is Mugisha Aime. I'm from Burundi, and actually I'm living in Bujumbura town. I'm in general medicine. I'm 27 years old, and I'm involved in Quaker community in Burundi. I think that is all in my presentation.
Thank you, and it's great to have you with us. And I'm sorry that most of the call has gone by, but we'll send a link afterwards so you can listen back to the recording, and hopefully next time we can all join.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And then should we move on to Cornelius?
Yeah, Cornelius, do you have any inspiring, uplifting, positive stories? I mean, can you what are those?
Hi, Amy. Are you able to?
Hello.
I'll do it. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. I think Cornelius, over to you.
All right. So I think basically what I can share is that last year we were doing a research on sustainability, and so the target was Kenyan yearly meetings, and we've done quite a number of them, almost 15, and just a few remaining. And I realized that there's a lot that's actually going on in various yearly meetings when we talk about sustainability. And so it was just a follow-up after the Pisac Peru sustainability mission that was passed. And because we had roles that every individual, the yearly meeting, monthly meetings were supposed to play. And so friends are busy in terms of trying to make sure that their church premises, so church compounds, are environmental friendly. And I think one of the most interesting, exciting stories that I'll share is that in one of the yearly meetings, we had friends formed the Sustainability Committee. That's the name that it was given, Sustainability Committee. And so the Sustainability Committee was supposed to make sure that all the monthly meetings, friends are trying to make sure that they bring seedlings, and then they keep on planting trees within the church compound. And members also supposed to make sure that it's an initiative, because remember what you do in the church compound, also the same should be a true reflection of where you come from. That's your homestead. And so friends are also just being encouraged to make sure that at least they're also planting trees within their home. And then things like, having their own decomposition pits at home, and trying to make sure that in as much as they are doing their own farming and planting of crops, they're not focusing so much on the artificial fertilizers, but they're also trying to focus on the organic manure for planting or raising crops. I think that is what was striking. And then also just a quick one, in Nairobi we have a church in Nairobi where friends, and especially mostly young people, have come together and trying to put up a garden within the church premises. And so they're actually asking friends to bring flowers so that they can actually put up a garden within the church compound. And I think that's something to measure.
Thank you, Cornelius.
Come to Ludwig.
Ludwig?
Hi. This isn't a story from my meeting or from my country even to begin with, but this is something that really inspired me a couple of years ago. It's in my region, the Asia West Pacific, so I think this counts somehow. It's when the Australia yearly meeting in 2015 gathered together and voiced out a massive cheer on support for National Divestment Day. It was on Valentine's Day that year. They moved to divest from all the big four banks in Australia because of its support for ethically questionable activities, such as but not limited to mining and fossil fuel investments. So I think that was a really laudable move. They also ran a campaign beginning with individual members divesting from any institution, whether financial or not, that had anything to do with anything ethically questionable, and being people who assisted in the creation of the Australasian Centre for Corporate Responsibility. I think this spoke a lot of about the Quaker community and what it stands for. So yeah, it was really beautiful. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a nice example. I guess it's interesting, the idea of taking divestment beyond just what the yearly meeting has done and actually looking at individual members, because I mean there's sometimes discussions around, we say in Britain that Britain yearly meeting has divested, but if members continue to hold their own finances in fossil fuels, have we really, as a community, have we really divested? So that's an interesting to see that it went further in Australia.
Yeah, as well, and they did an encouragement campaign as well for people who were not Quakers, whether or not they were involved in any work with the meeting. So, yeah.
Taz, how about you? Do you have anything you'd like to share?
He was mentioning some stuff in this community, yeah. Are you with us, Taz? You're muted, Taz.
Hello, sorry, I'm just trying to unmute my microphone. Hi. I mean, the only things that readily come to mind, apart from Britain Yearly Meeting having divested a while back from fossil fuels corporately, which has probably been mentioned already, is that certainly, while in my time as a Quaker, I've been involved with 3 different local meetings, and all of them, while I've been there, have taken steps to, like, all of them have had rather oldish meeting houses, and all of them took steps while I was involved with them to modernize their meeting houses to, like, insulate more effectively, save energy more, recycle more effectively. And one of them has grows most of its own food in a roof garden thing, so that's pretty good. Other than that, I can't think of too much, sorry.
YFGM, a lot of events are either vegan or vegetarian, right?
Yeah, that too.
We do that, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any Quaker events actually that I've ever been to that have been anything but vegetarian, so.
But it's still a good thing, I think. Yeah. Show some awareness.
Sorry, we have we're just up the road from the hospital, so we have all the sirens and ambulances outside. Sorry. Myron, how about you?
Well, in the South American meetings, there has not been an intense sustainability work, I think, which is kind of sad. But one thing that is coming to my mind is at my local meeting, the pastor and his family really demonstrated me the importance of sustainability, because I mean, in Bolivia we have a lot of resources, animals, everything is so natural, we have a lot of water, we are very blessed on that. But people in general, not just Quakers, but all people are not very mindset that sustainability is very important. But when I went, well, the pastor and his family invited me for a meal, and then I look at his house, and well, I got into the bathroom, and the thing is that they really they don't use water from they don't just open the, I don't remember right now the word for when you clean your hands, the
tap.
Yeah. They don't, but instead when they get showers, they have this water filter or something that they reuse the water. water is not expensive here. It's like, well, using resources is very cheap here. Like it's kind of it's a very low cost thing, but they reuses water very constantly for toilet, for getting in shower. And the thing is that and I asked them why, and they just give me a powerful reason that why should we damage the air or use it as if it was as if it is our thing. So yeah, so basically obviously it was very profound at the moment, but it is that is.
Thanks, Myron. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's been really interesting hearing about the variety of different challenges that we're all facing and how we're engaging with them. And I hope that this kind of group, this conversation can continue and we can support each other. I know some people mentioned feeling quite isolated and a bit of a lone voice. So hopefully we can support each other as a community of young friends around the world as we work in this area.
I'm sorry to say, and I encourage you to share this video with your community if it's of any help, and if you think of topics for further videos that could help what you're doing in your area, we're very happy to block our time to do it for you. We're really happy to engage with any conversation. That's what we're here for, really, to make positive change in the world.
Yeah. So I thought maybe we could just end with a minute of silence all together, and then Gabriel, you'll close when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I will see you next time. Anyone wants to say anything else before we close? Tas wants to say something. He's muted. That's it.
Brilliant.
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please.
Allow me to speak in Swahili. So, kwaheri, but I think basically what I just wanted to say is that one, we have to take care of our environment or we perish. 1, 2. I like the analogy of grooming ourselves. You know, every day you wake up in the morning, you have to shower and make sure that you look in the mirror, you're looking nice before you can actually step out with confidence and in confidence. I think it's the same thing. You also need to exercise when it comes to the environment. You know that you're looking nice. The environment also has to look nice.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so bye-bye, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.